When was your gut feeling actually right? Growing up, I was always wary of my uncle on my dad's side of the family, not blood related. Even as a young child, I just knew that I didn't like being around him. He never gave me any reason to feel this way, and I never voiced it to anyone. As I grew older, my family moved away, and I saw less of him. But anytime my extended family met for holidays, I would see him and avoid him. Couple years down the track, I was around 12 or 13, when my parents sat me and my older brother down and told us that my cousin, my uncle's daughter, had been raped and molested by him from a young age. This had all come to light when my aunt caught it happening later, found out she was abused by him too. Really wish my gut feeling hadn't been right about that one. Twice, while delivering pizza to shady neighborhoods, things didn't look right. I trusted my instincts and booked. Both times, no one ever called back to ask about their food never arriving. That's all the proof I need. It was 1995. I was 18, still living with my parents, and I was walking home from a friend's house at about 2 AM in the middle of the summer. He only lived 5 or 6 blocks away, and we often hung out watching movies after I got off work. Usually I would drive to his house because we'd been out with other friends, but this night I had parked at home and we walked to his place. There's not usually a lot of traffic between our houses, but this night I was about halfway home when a pickup truck drives by with 2 guys in the cab and 2 in the bed. I immediately felt like I was in danger. I saw the truck turn the corner and I dove over some hedges in the closest yard I could find. I hid under them. I saw the truck come back around the corner and slowly drive down the street. When it got to where I was hiding, I heard one of the guys say, "Where did he go?" and another respond that he didn't know. They kept driving, and I didn't see them again. I stayed hidden for a good 15 minutes before getting up and running the rest of the way home. I'm certain they would have jumped me if they found me. I stopped at Home Depot to pick up an item, so I knew it was going to be a quick trip. I'm in the store and notice I'm pretty much the only girl in there besides employees. I couldn't find what I was looking for and had to ask multiple employees before I found it. I check out, and as I'm heading out to my car I notice a shady dude standing against a tree on one side of my car. On the other side of my car is another shady guy sticking his arm outside of his car window. When I walked out they both turned and stared at me. My heart dropped. I started to feel queasy, and my mind instantly knew to turn around and go inside. I stood there shaking at the front of the store until I could get the courage to ask an employee to walk me to my car. As soon as they saw me walking out with an employee, the guy standing by the tree walked around my car and into the driver's side of the car parked next to me. To this day I swear I was a short walk away from being kidnapped. Driving in Pittsburgh, I stop at a red light. Hill goes up on my left, downhill on my right. Poor visibility to the left. The light turns green, but my brain tells me, hey bud, wait a second. I think this is a little weird, but I don't go yet. A millisecond later, a massive navy blue F-350 comes barreling downhill through the intersection from my left, blowing past the red light at about 45, then trundles down the hill. If I'd have gone, I would have been destroyed by 3 tons of Ford truck, for sure. Instead I trusted the spider sense. Edit, apparently we all have an inherent sense of danger. Maybe there's something to that. Bonus story. I was going down a hill on some 2-lane highway when at the bottom of the hill I noticed there was a bus stop. For some reason, the bus wasn't pulled over to the side to pick people up, so he was blocking the entire right lane. I have to hit the brakes, partly due to speed, and mostly because I can't go around him, because traffic is flying by on the left. As I'm waiting 10 feet behind him for a break in the cars in the left to go, something in the back of my mind says I bet someone else doesn't see that bus. So I look in my rear view and sure enough, there's a white Toyota Tundra, another truck, barreling toward me way too fast. No time for thinking. Jay just hit the go button and swing my car to the right to try to move onto the shoulder. Reasoning being that it'll mitigate the impact a little. I was right. The lady hit me, bounced me around, and sent my phone flying. But when we got out and inspected our vehicles, neither were damaged. She apologized. I just was thrown off by that bus. I reassured her it was fine. We bumped elbows and continued. My cousin introduced me to her friend, and I told her I don't really like him. He seemed nice, but he gives off a really weird vibe. I think I even avoided shaking his hand. I coughed into it and said sorry, I need to wash my hands. Later found out she was dating him and he was abusive and threatened to kill her and was unhinged. Used to work in the emergency room. Had a man come in with ripping chest pain that started not but 30 minutes prior, after he moved something heavy at his office. I knew he was going to die just by looking at him. Massive overwhelming dread just seemed to engulf me. I did his EKG and I hoped something would be wrong with it, so we could get him a bed. His EKG was perfect. Not 5 minutes later he went into cardiac arrest on our waiting room floor. After running the code for 45 minutes. He didn't make it. He had a massive aortic dissection. There wasn't much hope. This was almost 3 years ago, and I've seen more shit since then. But the memory is still burned in my mind. And it hurts knowing I was the last person to speak to him. One of my last weekends studying abroad in Costa Rica, my friend classmate wanted to go out drinking dancing. But I and the rest did not as we were tired. Friend convinced me to go as it was one of the last times we would get to. I didn't feel right the entire time I was getting ready. Just terrible gut feeling. As I was walking to the bus stop to meet him, a huge wave rushed over me. I thought I'm going to be robbed tonight. I wanted to turn around, but my friend saw me at the moment. We just continued on. We got kidnapped, robbed that night, and it was terrifying. I will never ever not listen and react to my gut feelings again. It started out as a gut feeling when I felt that something was off about my mom's boyfriend. Once I felt this way, I started to notice the red flags. The first one was the way my dog reacted to him. Even to this day he's the only person my dog flat out didn't like. I think he might have even kicked him at one point when we weren't around. The next major red flag I noticed was that whenever his daughters came over 6 and 8 they rarely wanted to spend time with their own father and would hang out with my mom. It almost felt like they were trying to avoid him. I ended up bringing my concerns to my mom and she started to notice things too and so broke it off with him. A few months later she gets contacted by an investigator. Apparently, the boyfriend had been caught trying to sleep with his current girlfriend's daughter, so they wanted to get a statement from mom. I'm just glad he got caught, and it sounds like he'll be in jail for quite some time. My mom's the only woman in the house, so I don't think the dude was trying to come after my brother or I. Plus, we are both bigger than the man too. Spent 2 years itching for no reason. Hypochondria gut told me it was cancer. Further research confirmed it for me. Told doctors for 2 years I had lymphoma. I was right. But they didn't figure it out until I was stage 4 advanced. Helped a victim of human trafficking get to a shelter. Context: I was a medical student at the time, now a resident, and the city my school was in is a hub for human trafficking. I noticed a patient in the emergency room who had a pretty bad injury to her face, was with a sketchy looking guy who was not related to her. She wasn't my patient, but I brought my gut feeling up to her doctor, who then made up some excuse to talk to the patient alone and got her to help. I never talked to her myself, but I couldn't shake the vibe I got from looking at her and the man she was with. When my dad passed out in a bathroom at the airport, I told him to purchase an Eid because they were selling them at the time at Sam's Club 2007 for 1k. I just knew it was an arrhythmia, and I was right. He died a month later, and if he had his Eid he might have survived. It was an arrhythmia. I was a 20-year-old student, alone in my apartment one evening. I was expecting the cable guy, so when I heard a knock at the door I opened it. I saw an older man. That definitely was not the cable guy as he did not have a uniform on. I asked him what he wanted. He said he was going around the apartments installing security alarms. I right away did not trust him and told him that was a bad time and that my roommate was on the phone long distance when long distance was expensive with her parents and was going through some personal stuff. She was not there, but I did not want him to think I was alone. He said, "Where is she?" I just closed the door in his face and said, "Not a good time." I called my landlord the next morning and asked her about installing security alarms, and she had no idea what I was talking about and did not authorize it. Woman, if you ever get into a situation where it looks like you are alone, really try to convince the person that is making you feel uneasy that you are not alone. Another time, when I was young, walking home in the dark and two men stopped their car and started saying lewd things to me. I just walked up to a house and knocked on the door, and they drove off quickly. Way more vulnerable when you are alone. Not me, but my wife. I had a work friend who used to come over to smoke blunts and play Sparks. I liked the guy, even though I knew he was a bit odd. He was really good at Call of Duty and rolled a means blunt. He used to tell some tall tales that everyone knew were bullshit. Well, my wife, who was only my girlfriend back then, always got a creep vibe from him. She said he looked at her with so much anger and malice, but never indicated any specific action that made her uncomfortable. After a while, I stopped hanging out with the friend since he wasn't coming to town as much for work. Fast forward a few years and another mutual friend calls me to say this Sparks friend was killed by police. Unfortunately, only after he had already killed his neighbor and his wife. Crazy. When I was a young kid back in the 80s, I was playing on my front lawn when this van pulled up on the road and the sliding door opened. A guy about 19, 20 aggressively waved at me to come to the van, and I immediately knew something wasn't right, so I ran inside and told my parents, and they freaked out and ran outside, but they were gone by then. Stranger danger wasn't really a thing back then, and I had no idea what an abduction was at the time. But looking back on it, my life cold ended that day had I chose to go over to the van. I often wondered after that day if they ever did get a kid to get into their van. Last year, I was staying up late watching Rick and Morty. My mom had been battling stage 4 metastatic breast cancer for a while. That night, she walked downstairs and just sat there with me until I decided to go to bed. I looked at her, and in my heart I knew she was close to leaving. So I said goodnight, and she said goodbye, which confused me until the next morning when my dad woke me up and told me she had passed away overnight. It still makes me wonder how we both knew. I had been living and working in Korea, and one day I was coming up out of a subway station and saw a man talking to another foreign woman. She had that polite, frozen smile on her face, the "why is this guy talking to me" smile. I walked up to her, linked my arm with hers, and said, "Hey, Sarah, there you are. Are you ready to go?" and just started walking. The guy followed us, but I sped up and made an abrupt turn into a coffee shop. We hid, and I saw him walk past, still looking for her. We ended up getting coffee and chatting for a bit, and I found out that he had followed her off the train and had been getting increasingly aggressive for the last 10 minutes. I don't know what might have happened, but I'm really glad I interfered. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.